he could be released from the limb itself. He was taken to the hospital. He is still in ICU. The family is obviously not here today because they are at his bedside. Unfortunately, Kevin has experienced serious brain damage and serious spinal damages. He's in the hospital, in ICU. It's a touch and go situation. I do have a statement from the family that I would now like to read. First, regarding the accident. The family says, "It was preventable. It should not have happened and cannot happen again. We were visiting a major tourist attraction. How can a visitor feel safe anywhere? It shouldn't have taken the tree crushing our child for the city to take this seriously." Regarding the condition of Gavin, the Christia family says, "There are just so many unknowns right now. We don't even know what the damage to his brain is, and we already know that he has so many more surgeries ahead. It's been a real roller coaster for us, and every time it looks like things start going well, there is some kind of setback and we are back to square one." So let's now shift to the lawsuit. And I have several pictures we've already gathered in this short time that I want to show you as to why we feel this accident was totally preventable. Over here, I have a picture. This was a drone shot that was taken 1 year prior to the accident. And if you look at it, you can clearly see the trees in Jackson Square, but yet one tree doesn't look like the other trees. If you look in this upper left-hand corner, you can clearly see, a year before the accident, the tree, and this is the tree that fell, you can see all the branches, all the limbs, all the foliage on the tree are gone, and the tree is already in decay and in distress. That was 1 year before. Now we shift to June 27th. On June 27th, suddenly a limb, a major limb, breaks off this tree. Everyone comes out. Fortunately, no one was hurt. They remove the limb, and in its place, and I have the photograph here, this is June 27th, you can clearly see the big hole left in the tree by that first limb falling off. All the dark area in here, that's all decay and rot. You don't have to be an arborist to see that. It's clearly visible to anybody at that time. Despite that, despite the obvious decay and rot and the fact that a limb has already fallen off, there are no ropes put up. There's no yellow caution tape. Nothing is done to warn people or block off that area so no one would sit on the bench directly under the other limb. And then 10 days later, not surprisingly, if we look at this picture over here, we're now at July 7th. You can see it's the same limb right here that was affected in the first limb breaking off. And now July 7th, the other limb, major limb, much bigger than the first one, this limb breaks off, and that is the one that tragically fell on top of Gavin. Again, look at all the decay, look at all the rot in this limb. It's very, very obvious. Why the city didn't put up caution tape, why they didn't rope off the area, I have no answer for that, but I can assure you we will find out. We're going to aggressively litigate this case. We're going to aggressively fight on behalf of the Christia family. And to be quite honest, it has implications for all of us as New Orleanians. As a New Orleanian myself, I'm very proud of the majestic live oak trees throughout our city, the beauty of these trees. But we need to know that we're safe, whether we're in City Park, whether we're in Audubon Park, whether we're in Jackson Square or anywhere else we have these beautiful trees. We need to know as a community that we are safe, that these trees have been inspected, and that a tragic accident like what happened to Gavin will never happen again. I think that's a larger and very important aspect of this lawsuit. Now, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Matt Hemmer, who prepared this lawsuit, who is the architect of this lawsuit. He will address specifically some of the defendants we've sued and why we've sued them. Matt, you want to come on up?
Thanks, Mr. Bart. I'm Matthew Hemmer. I'm one of the attorneys working with Mr. Bart to try and get some justice for the Christia family. This is a totally preventable tragedy, but it's not as simple as one person making a bad decision. Even now, we've already found 4 different defendants with responsibility for this terrible outcome, and we've named them all in this lawsuit. And we're going to keep digging. We're not going to stop until we find everyone who was responsible for this tragedy, because the Christia family deserves truth and they deserve accountability. Now, as Mr. Bart explained, we've sued the City of New Orleans. City of New Orleans is responsible for the city trees within its city limits. I think we've already talked a little about them, but there's a few other players that may not have gotten as much attention yet. First is a company called Arbor Pro. Arbor Pro is a tech company out of California. They were willing to take hundreds of thousands of dollars from the city to tell the city which trees were in danger of falling and what needed to be done to prevent something exactly like this from happening. It doesn't take a genius to see that didn't go as intended. When Arbor Pro was preparing that report for the city, there was a contractor, Bayou Tree Services. Now, Bayou Tree Services had a contract with the city that said, we're going to give you tree services. Before, during, and after that Arbor Pro report, Bayou Tree said, we'll take care of tree cutting in the City of New Orleans. Again, doesn't look like that went as intended. Next, we have a construction company, Smith Construction Company. Smith Construction Company did a construction project in the vicinity of that tree. Now, you can look at historical satellite pictures. You can see a green tree, Smith Construction does its work, and suddenly that tree is in a death cycle. Those pictures show, at the time of the Arbor Pro inspection, it was visibly in distress. We believe that construction is what led to this death cycle of that tree. Again, though, we're very early. We're going to keep digging until we find everyone who's responsible for this, because the Christias deserve that accountability for something that never should have happened in the first place.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Yes.
The tree company, the arborist, do you think it was negligent, an oversight? What happened? They had this contract and they were supposed to be inspecting these trees and doing the necessary measures for a tree like this. What do you think is the cause?
Go ahead, Matt.
You know, I think we've all had the experience of hiring someone who doesn't do a good job. You know, I think we've all seen someone who cuts corners, someone who doesn't take pride in what they're doing, or maybe someone who just doesn't have time. Sometimes in a case like this, though, cutting a little corner can cause very, very big problems. I suspect they never intended to do a bad job, but I have to think they could have done a better job. That's what we think happened. We believe they took the money to inspect that tree and just didn't do a good job.
When do you think that tree was inspected?
I would say the Arbor Pro inspection would have been at the end of 2019, perhaps early 2020, at a time when satellite imagery already shows they should have seen that that tree was heading towards failure.
No, the city maintains, we've had a few press conferences with Mayor Control. They maintain that there was no reason to rope off the area, that the inspection showed that there was no signs of immediate limb or whole tree failure. Do you have any comments to kind of counter that?
Well, sure. We have a legal phrase, res ipsa. The thing speaks for itself. Obviously, any statements to the contrary by the mayor or anyone else are simply not true, because the branch broke, the limb broke. And if you look at the picture of June 27th, I think this is critical. June 27th, this is right after that first limb broke. Look, there's decay there's rot. The limb, there's no foliage on it. It's dying. Anyone can see that. You don't have to be an arborist. And of course, this is the limb that then broke off 10 days later, and there's the same decay and rot, and there's no foliage. I find it inconceivable for someone to look at this, whether it's simply maintenance workers with Parks and Parkway, whether it's an arborist, and not see this. In fact, our arborist, the expert arborist we have talked to, said there's no way an arborist could have looked at this on June 27th and not said this limb is in immediate danger of falling. Personally, I don't believe the city had an arborist. I don't think they had one looked at it. I think some workers probably from Parks and Parkway just looked at the tree and said, nothing more needs to be done. Because if they had an arborist, I'm looking forward to taking that person's deposition and asking the obvious question, how can you see this, which is so obvious to us, and not realize that this limb is in immediate danger of falling? And what would it have hurt the city to rope off or put yellow caution tape around there? Nothing. It wouldn't hurt them at all. In fact, I find it interesting that after this accident and all the media coverage, the city did get an arborist to go out and check all the trees in Jackson Square. And guess what? One of the trees now has yellow caution tape around it. So it speaks to the neglect and negligence.
How often is the city supposed to have an arborist check on the trees that are on their property? Do you know?
Remember, there's two theories that we're working on. Number one is the neglect of the tree, the negligence of the city and other companies to properly maintain that tree. In addition to that, we're dealing with the negligence of the city in not roping off and not putting caution tape around that after they're dealing with something on June 27th that you know is a danger. To me, that's inexcusable. And I guess you're never thankful for an accident, but thank God this didn't occur during Essence Fest or French Quarter Fest or caroling in the square, where Jackson Square is just packed with people. Had it happened at that moment, because it's obviously a ticking time bomb, had it happened at that moment, we'd be talking about dozens and dozens of people who were severely injured. But I think it's, and I hope it's not systemic, but my concern is it might be. And as a member of this community, as a New Orleanian who's been here all my life pretty much, I'm concerned about the safety of the live oak trees throughout this community and what it represents. And just as the Christia family said in their statement, this should not have happened, and it should never happen again.
Can you all discuss how much money you all are seeking, hoping to get for the Christia family?
So much of that depends on the medical condition of the child. He was 16 years old when the limb fell on him. It was 2 days before his 17th birthday. He's now 17 years old. That's unknown. A large component of any lawsuit is medical expenses, future medical expenses, care of the child. Obviously, that could easily run into the millions of dollars.
Okay, so it's not far off to say possibly millions of dollars?
I think definitely millions of dollars, but we didn't specify an amount, and quite frankly, I don't want to focus on the dollar amount. We have two real issues we're dealing with. Number one is that the health of this child, it's very touch and go right now. We don't know what's going to happen. And then, of course, the larger issue, which is the safety of all of us, our community, with all of these live oak trees here. The judge will make a determination as to what damages should be awarded to compensate the family for medical expenses, past, present, future, etc. that will be for the judge to decide.
Do you all foresee a trial, or are you hoping that it can be settled?
I would
outside?
think most likely a trial. You can never tell. Put it this way, we will prepare for trial. Okay, yes.
When it comes to assessments, and this tree was inspected or assessed, 2020 or 2019, do you believe all the other trees need to be reassessed, finding that maybe something might have been missed on this one?
So first we need to make sure that we have competent arborists working on behalf of the city who are fanning out across the city and checking all of the live oak trees. Because at this point, we don't know if the arborist gave the information to the city and they failed to act on it, or if the arborist gave the wrong information to the city saying the tree's okay. We will find that out. We will find that out, but sure, I mean, we need to know, starting with the most populated area, tourist area, city park, Audubon Park, we need to know. We need to know. As I'm standing here today, I have no idea. We're going to dig into it, and hopefully the media will dig into it, and we'll find out the safety of our live oak trees. But this should never have happened. And then again, the second area I want to stress is after it did happen on June 27th, nothing was done to rope it off and protect the public. That concerns me greatly. That's on the city, not roping it off.
Should the city be focused on the trees that were assessed by those other companies? Because maybe there might be some faulty reports in that as well.
I think so. I think so. And we will know more, which I will be glad to share, once we get the arborist report and go through discovery to find out where the primary fault lied. Was it with the arborist company giving faulty information to the city, or did the arborist give good information to the city and then the city failed to act on it? At this point, we don't know.
Mr. Bart, any concern about response time? I know it took quite a bit for EMS and fire to actually show up to the scene. Have you heard of anything from witnesses?
I've heard about that. It's all anecdotal at this point. My best estimate is it took about 17 minutes. I've heard that I think the first people on the scene were from the fire station that's in the French Quarter. I don't know in those circumstances. First of all, I don't know if that's correct, if it was shorter than that or longer than that. And even if it was 17 minutes, is that an appropriate time? We're just going to have to find that out through discovery. During that entire time, we know from eyewitnesses that the tree was on top of the boy, crushing him, that the limb fell and was a direct hit on his head, knocked him to the ground, then the limb fell on top of him and pinned him to the ground, while his mother and brother were there. Fortunately, they were unharmed, but witnessing the horror of particularly the mom of her son trapped under that tree until I believe it was the fire department came and used a device to raise the limb up so they could slide the boy out.
Any maybe GoFundMe for the family that they have right now? I know it's kind of preliminary.
I'm sorry, any what?
A GoFundMe account, things like that.
I'm not aware of that.
I
What
believe-
can
I
you?
bel- Yeah. So I believe efforts are underway to get something like that set up for Gavin right now. I don't know if it's gone live today or if it's going to go live tomorrow, but I would expect in the next 24 hours for there to be something like that set up if anybody wants to help Gavin. But, in the meantime, whether you give or not, please do continue to pray for the family. They could really use it right now.
Can you give your first and last name?
Yes, sir. Matthew Hemmer, Matthewer.
It
Okay.
seems like, would you all still say it's somewhat of a fluid situation as you all do more research to figure out who's going to be the most liable when it comes to the city or the different arborist companies? But by the end of it, do you all think the city of New Orleans and maybe one company or more than one companies will end up, in a sense, having to pay up?
I think so. Like any lawsuit, we're at the very preliminary stage, and so much of these cases are developed through discovery. when we take depositions, when we get documents, when other companies start pointing the finger at each other, then we start getting the information we need. Ultimately, yes, I feel that the city, along with several of the defendants we've already sued, will share liability for what happened.
If the
Okay.
city is found liable, do you think that you're gonna be receiving any money from the city?
You know, unfortunately, it's a sad truth that the whole legal profession knows, that New Orleans does not pay their legal judgments. Right now, the strategy is, if you get a judgment against the city, they let it sit for about 12 to 15 years, and then they come in and offer you 50% of the judgment to settle. It's a sad truth. They can get away with it because in our state constitution, there's a provision that says you can't seize assets of any municipality. So New Orleans has this sad history of hiding behind that and not paying their judgments. It's been going on for years and years and years. And because of that, very few lawyers in New Orleans will even take a case against the city. We have taken this. We're going to fight it. This is a case that demands justice. It's important for the Cristea family. It's important for all the citizens of New Orleans. We're going to fight hard for them. We will get paid. If it takes a long time, it takes a long time, but we're not going to back down.
Why was it so important for you in this office to take on this case?
As a lawyer, oftentimes you get a case that just grabs you. I think that's the only way to say it. I felt so sorry for this family. It's something on multiple levels. Number one, a family, a totally innocent family that come to New Orleans and have this preventable accident happen to them, have this tragedy. I just can't imagine the horror of the mother in seeing what happened. It really touched me. I also realize how important the tourist industry is and how, quite frankly, the city needs to do better. On multiple levels, we just need to do better to protect tourists, to protect our tourist industry. And I guess the third point would be, as a New Orleanian, as one that regularly runs in Audubon Park under the live oak trees, I myself want to have a better sense of security that I'm safe.
You kind of touched on it a little bit in my last question. Being that it was a tourist that this happened to, is this sort of a black eye for the city in a way?
I hope not. I love New Orleans. I'm here. I love the city. I want to do everything I can to help the city, which is one of the reasons, as you all know, that I volunteered as an assistant district attorney in Jason Williams' office. I want to do what I can to help the city. And I'm hoping that this lawsuit can result in a positive benefit to New Orleans by bringing attention to a problem. It's an asset and a liability. Our asset is we have these beautiful, majestic live oak trees. The liability is we have to make sure they're safe. So I love New Orleans. I want to help New Orleans. But issues like this, particularly as affects tourists, must be addressed. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. I appreciate you coming out. If you have any more questions, feel free to contact our office. Hopefully, we'll be able to give you positive follow-ups in the not-too-distant futures. Thanks, Matt. I think he put together a masterful lawsuit in a very short amount of time. Take care, everyone. I also can give you statements from that family, the two that I read, if y'all would like that. Let's see, can we, Jordan, would you mind, can you maybe make a few copies, pass it out? Sure.
This one's mine.
Have
Right,
any
so
fun plans?
you all know Jordan, I
Yeah,
think, right?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so he's a good point person in the firm.
Oh yeah, he's super helpful,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, he got me a copy of the statement and everything.
Great.
So.
Oh, good, good. All right, so I'll read on Twitter what you have to say.
Hey, I've been tweeting.
I'm one of your followers.
Hey, you know how I am on Twitter.
Yeah.
I'm a little vocal. My thing is though, it's like if we don't say something,
Yeah.
it just goes by in the way, you know?
Right.
So,
I know. Well, keep up the great work.
thank
you're
you.
doing.
Thank you. Any fun plans this weekend? Anything to look forward to? I know we're only on Wednesday. I always ask people this. Okay. Okay, and how's that going so far?
And I'm going to try to play Sunday morning.
Oh, you go get shot. Okay. No, Travers Mackle is very good at golf. I am not. Yeah, so we have like a whole WDSU team that goes plays. So I've done putt-putt. My brother actually was competitively doing golf at DBU at Dallas Scotts University. Yeah, so him and my dad are very good, active golf fans. I was the cheerleader, dancer, that kind of stuff. So.
That's a great way to but it's such a great way to associate.
Yeah. No, I like driving the car. You know, there you go, right? So hopefully you get some good weather this weekend. So, yeah, you guys, thank you too. It's been so hot. I miss that.
So, you know, I'll tell you, I'm just talking about something.
Oh, I knew you were from Kentucky. Yeah.
Still.
Well, Dallas, it's dry there. So like when you sweat, it's like it just evaporates. But like, and you just walk out and you're like, wow, I just did my hair. And I've been having to do it again.
My dad says he says all the time for wet in New Orleans, it's either for rain, like sun showers, or for sweat.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice to have the rain. Just like, yeah. No, I got the last week and everything. I couldn't request you that. Actually, I have a couple people that are looking at those bids. So I should get good and actually because they can't find it.
Not bad.
And actually, there's no number.
I watched the field live, so I took notes of that. And so I learned to be savvy. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So, you know, nothing surprises me in the city. Really? Like, you get away with it.
Exciting.
But like, no, I just think on the wall, it's like, it just doesn't, you know,
You ready? You ready?
Yeah, something just, I think this popped out.
That's fine. You need some shots of Morrisburg?